I'll be the number 2 guy here in Scranton in 6 weeks. How? Name repetition, personality mirroring, and never breaking off a handshake. I'm always thinking one step ahead, like a carpenter that makes stairs.
We've come up with 9 principles of professionalism that we'd like to share with you. 9 rules that I hope you'll practice and which will go a long way toward establishing you as a true professional in your own mind and also in the minds of everyone your work brings you into contact with. Let's begin with our first principle, service. Always put the interests of the customer first. A big part of the integrity of a professional lies in the concept of service, of putting the needs of others ahead of one's own. Remembering always that customers are the ultimate reason for the work we do and the intended beneficiary of all our efforts on the job. A customer usually knows almost nothing about the work you do, about the company that you're employed by, the problems you face, or your own career goals. All the customer knows about and cares about is the product or service she's trying to get from you. This means communicating with customers can be a big challenge, one that puts a special responsibility on you and your professionalism. It's important to try to put yourself in the customer's shoes, to see any situation the way the customer does. And this is especially important in situations involving conflict. For example, when a customer offers a complaint about the quality of a product or a service, your first instinct may be to react defensively. This might mean to argue with the customer, to deny the problem, to explain it away, to blame it on someone else, or to point out that you and your company have your own problems and therefore you can't do much to help the customer.
Ask where he's from.
Absolutely.
Where are you from? Ohio? That's nice. So what do you want? He's upset about the watermark.
Okay, great. Now tell him that it was an unfortunate error and we're doing everything we can do to fix it and that you're sorry.
It was an unfortunate error. We're fixing it. And you already got your money back.
And you're sorry.
And the company has already apologized, so you can take that apology or not. Well, I don't see how that's our fault. And I've already told you the official position of Dunder Mifflin is apologetic, so I don't know what you want from me.
Okay, first, I just want to say that you are doing so good. Look, you have so many good qualities that the one that you might want to work on is apologizing.
Now, of course, none of these responses is very effective. None will satisfy the customer, and none will improve your relationship with the customer. All these responses are likely to escalate the budding conflict and perhaps turn it into a full-blown confrontation. With a little bad luck, you may end up with a really serious problem on your hands, maybe even including a formal complaint or a lawsuit. Instead, resist the temptation to defend yourself and your company and try to see the situation from the customer's point of view. Frankly, she doesn't care why the problem arose. She just wants it fixed. She knows very little about the problems you have to wrestle with, and she doesn't really care. Professionalism in any organization begins with service, and that means treating customers properly. It's an important rule to put at the center of all your business communications. And now our second principle, respect others. Always treat your fellow workers, your company, and everyone else with respect. There's a phrase some leadership experts use that I particularly like. It's the phrase, internal customers. It refers to people within an organization that you, as an employee, may respond to or serve. I like this concept of internal customers because it helps you develop the right attitude toward the colleagues you work with. When you think of them as your customers, you realize that they too, just like external customers, make your job possible. The fact that they need your help is what makes your position necessary. So to justify your paycheck and to earn the promotion and raise you're hoping for, you need to treat those internal customers with the same kind of respect you'd offer external customers. Now, this means when an issue or a problem arises, you put yourself in the shoes of your internal customer. Think about the position your colleague is in and think about what you can do to make things more comfortable for him or her. Bear in mind what your colleague knows or doesn't know, and when you can't provide the kind of support he or she needs, rather than responding defensively or just blowing them off, explain the situation and look for a solution that will work for everybody. Above all, don't think about supporting your colleagues as an interruption of your work. To a large degree, it is your work. Helping people is what we're there for. After all, the help that people in an organization provide to one another is a major factor in making the organization run smoothly. So whenever you catch yourself thinking or saying, "Go away, stop bothering me, let me get my work done," instead stop, take a deep breath, and adjust your attitude. Remember, you need to treat your colleagues the way you'd like to be treated. If everyone does that, working together will be a whole lot more pleasant as well as more efficient and productive. In addition, you should strive to treat your company with respect. What does that mean? Well, among other things, it means that you should always help your company put its best foot forward when you're dealing with the rest of the world. Whether it's official company business or not, whenever we communicate with others, remember that we're representing the company that employs us. In fact, in one way or another, you're always a spokesperson for your company, even if it doesn't say that on your business card. So when you write a note, have a conversation with a client or supplier, conduct a meeting, whatever it may be, don't use language that's too informal or simply inappropriate for a business context.
What can I do for you?
For starters, I think that you should resign.
Okay. Well, wasn't really my fault. The guys at the paper mill.
You're the head.
guy at the paper mills. No.
You're the head of the company. It should
I'm
be
the head of the company.
and that makes it your responsibility.
I'm a regional
and
manager.
So you should lose your job.
Okay, this is insane. You can get out of here. Get out.
Fine.
It's insane. Give this to somebody who will appreciate it.
Non-transferable.
Doesn't matter. Out, please.
I'm calling the Better Business Bureau.
Yeah, well, I'm calling the ungrateful hotline.
Always remember that you're representing your firm. And when you write a letter in a business context, always use company stationery and take a good look at the professionalism and quality of the communication before you send it off. In this way, you're showing that you get it. You recognize that your company deserves respect and that the recipients of your communications deserve respect too. And that leads to our third principle: respect yourself. Treating others with respect is not about being a doormat. Everyone in an organization deserves humane, fair treatment, and that includes you. So don't think that treating others as customers who deserve respect means that you should give in to every demand, no matter how unreasonable it may be, or that your needs, desires, and preferences should be ignored. You want to strive for balance, a situation in which everyone in the organization gets a fair shake, and in which everyone recognizes the need to put the overarching mission of the organization first as much as possible. Finding the balancing point between your interests and those of your colleagues isn't always easy. You need to develop a personal compass that you can use to help you gauge behavior that's appropriate or inappropriate. And partly, this involves looking objectively at people's behavior, always putting individual issues or events into the biggest possible context before trying to judge them. For example, suppose there's a major deadline that your whole office is mobilized around. Maybe it's a big contract proposal that everyone is contributing to and that could generate huge revenues for your company if it's successful. Maybe this contract proposal is due by Monday morning. And suppose you find that as part of the team, you've been asked to work late every evening for 7 work days in a row, and you've done so uncomplainingly. Now your boss asks you to come in on Saturday morning as well. You're exhausted, you've been looking forward to the day off, and you really need the time to catch up on all your personal chores, food shopping, cleaning the house, and so on. What should you say or do in this situation? Well, there's no one right or wrong answer, but the way to think about the question is to take an objective look at the issue in the biggest possible context. Ask yourself questions like, have other people with jobs similar to yours been working equally long hours in this context, or maybe even longer? If you've been staying late, have others been coming in extra early or working through lunch hours, perhaps without your noticing it or being aware of it? Find out the answers to questions like these before you decide whether you're being treated fairly or unfairly. consider other factors as well. For example, do you have unique skills that make your presence absolutely essential? For example, are you the only person in the office who knows how to use the graphics software to fine-tune the proposal presentation? If that's the case, then working on Saturday may be unavoidable from a practical standpoint. You simply have to be there because the proposal isn't going to get done without your help. So before you condemn your boss or get angry at him or at the rest of the team, try to put yourself in your boss's shoes. Again, treat him as your internal customer and think about whether there's a realistic alternative or a better plan for getting the project done. Again, I'm not advising you to be a doormat. The idea is not to simply take whatever people dish out and accept treatment even when you feel deep down that it's unfair. If you feel you're being taken advantage of in any way, especially if it happens repeatedly, you need to speak out. And there are times when you may need to suggest changes be done around the office concerning how work is being accomplished. For example, if you are the only person with particular skills that mean you're constantly being called on to work over and above the work that other people are being asked to do, why not suggest to your boss that you train one or two of your colleagues in the same skills that you have so that you won't constantly be called upon and subject to particular pressure? That's one way of looking at the big picture and finding a solution that will work both for you and for the organization as a whole. But when the time comes that you feel you really do have to complain about unfair treatment, you need to handle that professionally as well. And that includes communicating according to the following principles. First, keep your anger or hurt feelings under control. When you're upset about something at the office, it can be very tempting to vent about how bad you feel, especially if you've been stewing about things for some time and keeping your feelings under wraps.
I do report your snoring like you.
Oh,
No!
okay, calm down.
No, you calm down. I cannot work with Jim anymore.
Okay.
Either he goes or I go.
Wait.
You choose.
Stop.
One of us is out of here by the end of today.
But when you let your emotions take over in a business context, it usually backfires. Because the expression of strong emotions is fairly rare in business, it's perceived as startling or even shocking when it happens. And that means that if you lose your cool in a business context, people are encouraged to focus on you and your behavior rather than on the problem you're trying to solve. And even if your anger or disappointment are completely justified, putting those feelings at the center of the conversation is likely to be perceived by other people as manipulative or unfair, as if you're trying to bully them or blackmail them or evoke pity from them, rather than making a logical case in support of your argument. So before you vent your emotions, remember, putting your emotions at the center of the conversation is usually going to be inappropriate and will not help your cause. So monitor how you're expressing yourself when you've got a complaint to get off your chest, especially when you know that you have strong feelings about what you're discussing. Watch out for signs that you're letting emotion take over the situation. Signs like a raised voice, emotional language, sarcasm, a failure to listen to other people, or personal attacks. When you catch yourself using these forms of language, cut back. Use the old technique of taking a deep breath, perhaps counting to 10, and then start over, keeping your cool. A second important rule about communicating professionally when you've got a complaint to utter is talk clearly and objectively about the facts. Gather all the information you need to explain what has happened in specific detail, including, where appropriate, dates, figures, and other basic facts. Describe the events and the situations objectively in terms of observable behaviors rather than subjective internal feelings. So, for example, instead of saying, "Everyone around here treats me like I'm their personal servant," instead describe the behaviors that bother you in factual terms. "I've had to skip lunch 4 times in the past 2 weeks when 2 of the managers asked me to go shopping or handle banking chores for them." The first statement about being a personal servant simply expresses an emotion. The second statement describes specific behaviors that you want to see changed, and therefore it's much more likely to lead to the kind of solution to the problem that you're actually seeking. Next, focus on one problem rather than complaining about multiple issues that have accumulated over time. Now, it's difficult for many people to speak up on their own behalf. Sometimes we have a tendency, unfortunately, to allow ourselves to be treated as a doormat, and it's a bad habit that's difficult to overcome. As a result, we often let situations that are unpleasant or unfair fester for days, weeks, or even longer, and then when we finally work up the courage to say something, the anger or hurt has become so great that it flows out in a torrent, including numerous specific problems, incidents, or issues that we've been storing up inside over time. You've probably experienced this kind of communication where you or someone else is so upset over many things that have happened over time that the conversation just gets out of control and the person who's complaining starts throwing everything into the discussion. Oh, and then there was the time, and what about that other day, and do you remember 6 months ago? That kind of communication really doesn't work very well. There are a couple of big problems with it. For one thing, it's much harder for a manager or other company leader to try to solve many problems at once. If you give the person you're speaking with a single challenge to tackle, it will look and feel manageable rather than overwhelming, which means there's a much better chance you'll get some positive results. For another, if you let fly with a litany of complaints, once again, you'll be perceived as behaving emotionally rather than logically. Whoever is listening to you may walk away with an impression like, wow, he threw everything at me but the kitchen sink. What a hothead. And once again, your behavior and your emotions will take center stage rather than the problem that needs to be solved. The lesson is speak up promptly when something is bothering you that it deserves to be discussed. And if you've been sitting on a problem for a long time, you probably just need to let it go. When you do share a complaint or an issue with your boss or other company leader, you need to focus on what's current or very recent rather than dragging up multiple problems or events from ancient history, because that usually is very ineffective and leads to further argument rather than a problem solution. Also, propose a solution that will work for everyone or offer to help develop such a solution. Standing up for yourself in a professional way includes having a solution in mind. Your solution, whatever it is, should take into account the goals and needs of the organization and show how those goals can be met while also treating you and your colleagues with the respect you deserve. Remember our principle of treating others as internal customers and trying to identify with their situation. Put yourself in your boss's shoes. She has plenty of problems already, and the last thing she needs is to have another one dumped in her lap. So when a situation demands that you communicate about a problem with her, try to come with a ready-made solution that she can sign off on. If that's not possible, if you've racked your brain and have been unable to come up with a ready-made solution, at least say to your boss, I'm not sure what the solution is, but if we talk it through together and perhaps with other members of the team, I'm sure we can come up with one, and I'm ready to do anything reasonable to make that possible. If you approach a problem with that kind of attitude, your boss will be grateful, you'll have a better chance of having your complaint heard and responded to, and best of all, you'll get some practice in thinking like a boss and solving the kinds of problems that bosses have to deal with every day. It's the kind of thinking that paves the way to personal and career growth in the long term. When other people in the office see you behave this way, treating the problems of the organization as your problems and recognizing that your own needs, while important, have to be balanced against the needs of your colleagues and the needs of the organization as a whole, they'll respect you. They'll say, there's a person who thinks like a leader. And when the time comes to choose the next leader for the division, the department, or the company, you're the kind of person they'll want to put on the list. Our fourth principle of professionalism, be positive. Never gossip, gripe, or badmouth others. Unfortunately, it's not always possible to like or even respect everyone you work with. Customers, clients, suppliers, colleagues, bosses, and Other people you come into contact with at work are occasionally going to be disorganized, self-centered, rude, bullying, egotistical, or just plain stupid. That's life, and it's only natural for you to react to bad behavior from others with irritation, anger, or disgust. It's all part of reality. But the way you feel about people and the way you talk about them may need to be two different things. When you criticize others at work, whether it's in formal settings like a business meeting or even in informal settings like water cooler chat or lunchroom conversations, when you criticize people in any of these contexts, you produce several negative results. First, you run the risk of making yourself look like an angry, hostile person, a whiner. This kind of image suggests to others that you're more concerned about yourself, your feelings, your convenience, your opinions, than you are about getting along with others in order to accomplish things at work. Second, when you criticize others, you may alienate other people unnecessarily. Suppose you spend your lunch break chatting with your friends about how much you hate Jerry from accounting or Frida from the warehouse. You never know whether someone you're speaking with may actually be good friends with Jerry or Frida. And even if they're not, what about the person at the next table who may overhear you? Or the person who learns about what you said through the company gossip grapevine? After all, people do talk, and one of the juicier forms of gossip is to pass along snarky things that people say about one another. So you've got to think very carefully about the things you say about other people, because you never know what kind of enemy you may make by a few words that are misplaced. When we gripe about people, we usually end up saying things that we would never say in front of them, and everybody knows this. So even though the people that you're complaining to about a third party may act sympathetic and supportive or may laugh along at your sarcastic cracks, there's a little bit of them that is probably thinking, gee, I wonder what sorts of things he says about me when I'm not in the room. Finally, when you behave critically, you damage your image as a leader or potential leader. As a business manager, I've often been involved in discussions about which staff members had the skills and personality traits to move up the ladder into leadership roles. On more than one occasion, I've seen people with plenty of talent, intelligence, ambition, and drive being rejected as possible managers because they seemed too negative, more prone to complain about people and problems than to try to solve those problems and work with those people. Being negative in this way is not a trait we look for in leaders. By the way, our warning against bad-mouthing other people doesn't refer only to your colleagues or others who work within your organization. You should also avoid bad-mouthing customers, suppliers, and even competing companies. If you think your company is the best in the field, great. Seize every opportunity to talk it up and to explain why it's better than the competition. But you need to do this in a positive way rather than focusing on tearing down the other guys. Going negative in a competitive situation is a turnoff for most customers, and it also leads them to think, I wonder what these people have to be so defensive about. They spent all their time ripping the competitors. It sounds as though they're really nervous about them. Paradoxically, you see, when you focus your attention on the negatives about the competition rather than your own strengths, you indirectly may end up driving customers into the arms of that competition. And one last point, careers are long. Things change, and what goes around comes around. So another reason to avoid bad-mouthing the competition is that you never know whether you might end up working for them someday. Avoid future embarrassment by playing the competitive game tough but fair. Treat the competition with respect, and in the end, you'll be very glad you did. Our fifth principle, honesty. Always strive for honesty and transparency. Naturally, honesty is an important element in effective business communications. Lying to people is the opposite of professionalism, and no organization where lying is tolerated or, heaven forbid, encouraged is going to be successful for long. But honesty isn't just the absence of lying. It's more complicated than that. In the fullest sense, honesty and transparency is about finding the appropriate level of openness when dealing with people inside and outside your organization. It's also about wisely balancing people's right to know against the legitimate need for discretion when personal, confidential, or proprietary information is involved, which is something we'll discuss in more detail in a moment. Another reason why we sometimes shy away from honesty and transparency is to avoid disclosing information that we fear will make us or our organizations look bad. And obviously, this is a natural tendency. Everyone wants to look good in other people's eyes. We also want our organizations to look good. And this is even, to a degree, an appropriate and praiseworthy objective. As I've said, one aspect of professionalism is representing your organization with pride, and that's a good thing. But being proud of yourself and your organization doesn't mean distorting or obscuring the truth. So when you're trying to make a sale or to deal with a customer who is unhappy about something, you owe it to that person to be straight about the facts, whether all of them make you look good or not. It's not just about answering questions truthfully or about sticking to the letter of honesty. It's also about disclosing information which maybe you could get away with hiding, but which people deserve and need to know. Recognize that there's a line between openness and fair dealing on the one hand and obfuscation and dissembling on the other hand, where you're withholding just enough of the truth so that the other person is misled and may end up making a decision that's bad for them in the long run. You've got to recognize where that line is and resolve to stay on the right side of that equation. Our sixth principle, discretion. Be discreet with personal and company information. At the same time that you're pursuing openness and honesty in your communications, you also know where to draw the line, where to put boundaries around what's appropriate to share and what isn't. There are several specific kinds of information you should not pass along to customers or others outside your organization or to anyone else who isn't authorized to receive it. These include personal or private information, either about people who are part of your organization or about customers, clients, suppliers, or others you do business with. Don't gossip about private matters, talk about other people's careers, or mention off-the-job activities in work situations. If your boss, for example, is away from the office because he's attending his daughter's soccer game or going shopping for golf clubs, you wouldn't tell a client that. Instead, simply say, Mr. Jones isn't here right now. May I help you, or can I take a message? Also, don't share proprietary company information. This includes business plans that haven't been publicly announced, information about processes, techniques, or methods that give your company an edge over the competition, financial data that hasn't been publicly released, and information about customers, clients, suppliers, or other company relationships. Also, be discreet about information about internal company politics, who's up, who's down, news about disputes or disagreements within the company, or feuds or factions. When a company policy has been set on some matter that may have been controversial, your job as an employee is to support the policy publicly, not to talk about your disagreement with it or to describe to people any of the internal debates about it. It can be tempting to divulge these and other kinds of internal company information in a public forum or simply when getting together with friends or colleagues in other companies. It can be tempting to do this because we all love to be the person with the inside information. To be the one to divulge the latest scoop can make us feel important. Sometimes you may even feel particularly proud about something your company is doing, some brilliant new strategy you're developing, and perhaps it's part of your job to help make that strategy come to fruition. It's very tempting to want to talk about it and get some credit in the eyes of the people you're chatting with. But remember that discretion is part of professionalism, that time will come when you'll be able to talk about that strategy openly. Do it too soon, and you may find yourself running into a nasty surprise when a competitor learns about the information ahead of time and perhaps steals a march on your brilliant idea. So keep sensitive information to yourself until the time is right to reveal it. When in doubt as to whether or not it would be appropriate to divulge a piece of information, hold back. Ask someone in authority or get an expert opinion from a company lawyer, executive, or someone else whose judgment you trust. Principle 7, responsibility. Always accept responsibility for your mistakes and achievements and give credit to others for theirs. A reliable marker of people who are fine communicators and therefore strong leaders and true professionals is their willingness to accept responsibility, even in instances where it might be possible for them to wriggle out of it. Unfortunately, examples of how we try to evade responsibility are all too common. It shows up, for example, in the use of what language mavens call weasel words, phrasings designed to obfuscate what is happening in a situation and who is responsible. I'm thinking of expressions like, mistakes were made. We can't do that because it's our policy. We'll make every reasonable effort to accommodate you. Thanks for your understanding. Taking responsibility, then, means communicating plainly about what is happening and, when necessary, taking your lumps for mistakes that you've made. If you make a mistake, say so. If you try something and fail, let people know. In fact, go out of your way to deliver the bad news personally before anyone else has a chance to do it. Most bosses will tell you, well, I don't like getting bad news, but what's worse is being blindsided by it. So don't surprise me. Keep me informed, and we can work out any problems that arise together. Know yourself. Devote energy and effort to becoming conscious and aware of your real capabilities. Keep track of how long jobs take you to complete. A diary may be helpful. Get to know your own work habits, your strengths and your weaknesses. Are you most productive in the morning or the afternoon? Do you work best in short bursts or in steady slogs? Do you rely on teamwork or work best as an individual? Do you work best without a structure, or do you benefit from having a firm deadline that you have to meet? Knowing the honest answers to questions like these will help you have a clearer idea of your real capabilities and make it easier for you to give realistic, honest estimates of how much work you can get done in a given time period. And this will enhance your reputation as someone whose word can be relied upon. Principle 8, grace under fire. Keep your cool in times of crisis. If you can do this consistently, you'll develop a reputation as a good person to have in the room when times are tough. You'll be the person that gets drawn into the emergency meetings in order to lower the temperature and help find a real solution. That's another way of saying you'll be considered a true professional. And our 9th principle, diligence. Always work hard, learn constantly, and look for ways to add value. Your work ethic, that is, your commitment to doing your best, executing your tasks as effectively and with as much quality as possible, speaks volumes about you and your character. Always look for ways to be as productive and valuable to your company as possible. Look for ways to streamline workflows, to cut costs, to expand sales, to boost productivity, ways to do more with less. Implement these kinds of improvements whenever you can, or suggest them to people if others' help is needed to make them possible. You'll be glad you did, and you'll develop a reputation for professionalism and leadership, which will benefit your career enormously. I'm going to conclude with a bit of wisdom drawn not from some business guru or communications expert, but from the writings of Thich Nhat Hanh, a Buddhist monk from Vietnam who's a famous scholar, teacher, and peace activist. In one of his books, Nhat Hanh explains unmindful speech can kill, and here's how he describes its meaning. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I vow to cultivate loving speech and deep listening in order to bring joy and happiness to others and relieve others of their suffering. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I vow to learn to speak truthfully, with words that inspire self-confidence, joy, and hope. I am determined not to spread news that I do not know to be certain, and not to criticize or condemn things of which I am not sure. I will refrain from uttering words that can cause division or discord, or that can cause the family or the community to break. I will make all efforts to reconcile and resolve all conflicts, however small. Nhat Hanh, of course, was writing in a spiritual and religious context, but his words apply to any form of communication, including business communication. As Nhat Hanh says, unmindful speech, communication that is thoughtless, self-centered, dishonest, or destructive, can cause needless division, conflict and unhappiness. And that's true in organizations, in families, or in the larger community. On the other hand, mindful speech can produce, in Nathan's words, self-confidence, joy, and hope. Wouldn't those be great qualities to experience and share in the workplace? Wouldn't a colleague who produces those feelings be someone everyone would want to work with? And wouldn't a business person who practices Nathan's precept be an inspiring leader, a true professional? Again, Nathan may not be a business guru or a CEO, but we could all do a lot worse than to consider his teachings when striving to improve the way we relate to and communicate with one another, on the job and in all of our lives.